Welcome to the Fundamentals of Fitness, the podcast where we strip away the noise, the guilt, and the unrealistic expectations around health and fitness, and then we focus on what actually works in real life. I'm Alison, your no-nonsense coach. So whether you're driving home exhausted, walking the dog after a long day, or trying to convince yourself you should probably train now, settle in, because today we're going to talk about something almost everyone struggles with at one point. How do you train when you're tired? Pop on those trainers or grab that cuppa. Let's get right into it. There's a version of fitness culture that makes people believe that every workout should feel intense, high energy, high motivation, high performance. But real life doesn't work like that. Some days you feel really strong, focused, ready to go. And some days everything feels really heavy. Your body feels slow, your brain feels a bit foggy, and your motivation disappears. And even thinking about training feels exhausting. And in those moments, most people fall into one of two extremes. Either they force themselves to train at maximum intensity no matter what, or they stop completely. But high performers don't usually operate at either extreme. They adapt, they regulate, and they understand that training intelligently is not the same as training emotionally. And that's what this episode is about. How to understand fatigue, how to recognize the difference between tiredness and burnout, and how athletes adjust under pressure, and how to keep momentum without destroying yourself in the process. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do is not train harder, it's train differently. So let's understand fatigue. And one of the biggest problems in fitness is that people treat all tiredness as the same thing. But fatigue is complex. There's physical fatigue, mental fatigue, emotional fatigue, and neurological fatigue, and they all affect performance differently. Sometimes your muscles are tired, and sometimes your brain is tired, and sometimes your body is actually capable of training, but your mind feels overwhelmed. That distinction really matters because many people interpret mental fatigue as physical inability. But often they're not physically incapable of movement. They're psychologically overloaded. So let's look at central fatigue. Central fatigue refers to fatigue that originates from the central nervous system rather than the muscles themselves. Stress, poor sleep, emotional overload, decision fatigue, it all impacts the nervous system. And when the nervous system is fatigued, motivation drops, your effort feels higher, your coordination can decline, and your reaction time slows. So the same session suddenly feels harder, not because you became weak overnight, but because your system is under strain. One of the things elite athletes become very skilled at is regulation, not just pushing through. Regulation. Understanding when the body can tolerate high intensity and when the adjustment is necessary. High performers do not blindly ignore fatigue, they assess it and they structure around it. I have a client who is self-proclaimed lazy gal. Every time she felt exhausted after work and struggled to train, she would criticize herself. But we looked a little bit deeper and she was sleeping really badly. Her stress was really high from work. Her nutrition was definitely inconsistent and mental load was enormous. The issue wasn't her laziness, it was accumulated fatigue. And when we unpicked it, the goal shifted from punishment to recovery and intelligent consistency, and that changed the game for her. Sure, she's still a lazy gal at heart, but she trains with consistency now. So let's do a little bit of reflection. Think about the last time you skipped training because you felt tired. Were you truly physically incapable or mentally overwhelmed? Because those are not the same thing and they require different responses. So why can pushing harder backfire? And one of the most damaging beliefs in fitness is the idea that pushing harder is always the answer. And that discipline means ignoring exhaustion, that successful people never slow down. But physiologically, that makes very little sense. Your body adapts through a balance of stress and recovery. I keep going on about this because it's so important. Training is the stressor. Recovery is where adaptation occurs, and without recovery, muscle repair slows, hormonal balance is disrupted, nervous system fatigue accumulates, and your performance decreases. So if your recovery is insufficient, adding more stress is not productive. It's just simply more stress. Let's talk about cortisol and chronic stress. And when stress remains elevated for long periods, cortisol levels can stay chronically high. Now, cortisol itself is not bad. I've discussed this. It's essential. But chronic elevation affects sleep quality, recovery, appetite regulation, energy levels, and mood. And when people are already stressed from life, work, finances, family, emotional pressures, then try and train maximally on top of that, the system can become overloaded. One of the biggest reasons elite athletes sustain performance over long careers is not just hard training, it's recovery management, it's sleep, recovery modalities, load management, nutrition, regulation. Because performance is not built by endlessly pushing harder, it's built by balancing stress intelligently. I worked with someone who believed every workout needed to leave them exhausted, sweating heavily, completely drained. Otherwise, she felt it didn't count. And for a while, she made progress. But then her energy crashed, her consistency dropped, motivation disappeared, and her injuries increased. Not because she lacked discipline, because the system was unstable. Once we introduced lower intensity days, recovery-focused sessions, and smarter structure, consistency returned, and interestingly, her results improved. The nervous system does not care about your ego. And this is important. Your nervous system does not respond to motivational quotes. It responds to total stress load. And total stress includes work stress, emotional stress, poor sleep, under-fueling, illness, relationship stress, training stress. Your body experiences all of it, which means recovery needs to match reality, not your ego. So what's the difference between resting and quitting? And nuances matter because rest is healthy, avoidance is different, and many people struggle to tell that difference. Rest supports your momentum. Rest is strategic. It allows recovery, adaptation, repair, long-term consistency. Athletes schedule recovery intentionally because they understand it improves performance. And avoidance breaks momentum. Avoidance usually feels different. Avoidance usually comes with guilt, negotiation, delay, emotional resistance. The issue is not needing rest. The issue is disconnecting completely. In elite sport, training load changes constantly. An athlete may reduce intensity during periods of high fatigue, but they rarely abandon structure entirely. Why? Because continuity matters. If we look at distance runners, they understand that consistency over time matters more than occasional heroic efforts. That means some sessions are lighter, some are harder, some are purely recovery focused, but the process still continues. And this links to auto-regulation. And auto-regulation means adjusting training based on current readiness and recovery state, not emotionally, objectively. High performers assess fatigue, readiness, performance markers, recovery capacity, and then adapt intelligently. One of my clients used to skip training completely if he felt tired. So we reframed the goal. Instead of asking, can I do the perfect session? We asked, what version of training supports me today? Sometimes that meant lighter weights, shorter sessions, mobility work, or walking. And once he stopped treating reduced intensity as failure, his consistency improved massively. So let's have another little reflection, shall we? What if the goal isn't all or nothing? What if the goal is stay connected to the process? Because often the people who succeed long term are not the people who never get tired. They're the people who know how to adjust without disappearing. So what should you actually do when you're tired? How do you train intelligently when energy is low? Step 1. Assess the type of fatigue. Ask yourself, am I physically fatigued? Am I mentally overwhelmed? Am I emotionally drained? Am I sleep deprived? Because the response may differ. Step 2. Reduce intensity before cancelling completely. A lighter session still counts. Movement still matters. Momentum still matters. Remember, reduced is not pointless. Reduced is strategic. Step 3. Protect recovery. When fatigue is high, prioritize your sleep, improve your fueling, hydrate properly, and reduce unnecessary stresses. Recovery is not weakness. It is part of performance. And the athletes who last longest usually regulate best. Like Cristiano Ronaldo, longevity at elite level requires incredible awareness of recovery, routine, sleep, and regulation, not just the intensity. And while most people listening are not elite athletes, your body still benefits from the intelligent recovery. Step 4, maintain your identity. And this is really big. Even when energy is low, maintain some connection to the identity. Walk, stretch, train lightly, do something, because identity survives through continuity. Step 5, stop romanticizing exhaustion. Being exhausted all the time is not a badge of honor, and destroying yourself every session is not proof of discipline. Sustainable performance is far more intelligent than constant burnout. Let's have a final reframe. Sometimes training hard is the right decision. Sometimes recovery is the right decision. Wisdom is knowing the difference. And high performers learn to listen intelligently, not emotionally. You are allowed to be tired. You're allowed to adjust. And you are allowed to train differently during difficult periods. Because consistency is not about functioning perfectly every day. It's about staying connected to the process long enough for the process to happen. And often, the people who succeed long-term are not the people who push the hardest. They're the people who learned how to recover properly, adapt intelligently, and continue consistently. So the next time you feel tired, don't immediately ask, should I quit today? Ask, what version of training supports me best right now? Because that question can change everything. If this episode helped you rethink how you approach fatigue and training, share it with someone who constantly feels guilty for being tired. Because recovery is not weakness, it is part of performance. And if you're building long-term strength, health, and performance, make sure you're following the fundamentals of fitness so you don't miss the next episode. Because next time we're talking about plateaus and what to do when it feels like absolutely nothing is changing. Until then, train with structure, recover with intention, and build something that lasts. I'll see you in the next one.